Everyone eats out, but people often miss how the food arrives on their plate. Every meal has a story of growers, suppliers, founders, and operators making it all happen. Welcome to Grounded. I'm Lauren Mitchell, and each week I will bring you conversations with the amazing people behind the brands you know and the ones you'll want to know. Grounded is powered by the Buyer's Edge platform, the leading food service digital procurement network, powered by data, software, and collaborative relationships. Let's get grounded. Today's guest is a special one. He's a passionate and proven leader, held key roles at brands like Wendy's, Smashburger, Portillo's, and Noodles & Company. He's worked on both international and domestic supply chain. Chief Supply Chain and Technology Officer at Krispy Krunchy Chicken, Joe Gordon, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here today with you.
I'm pleased to be here with you. I had a great prep call with you. You're one of the first guests to challenge me on so many topics that I really feel like this is going to be a great conversation. You are very analytical. And again, I can't get over how excited I am to talk to you. So thanks again for taking the time.
Absolutely.
Okay. Why don't we head on down into the brand itself, Krispy Krunchy. So for those that aren't familiar, talk to us a little bit about what it looks like, where it can be found. It's not typical. So I want you to just kind of talk a little bit about that.
Great. And I'll talk a little bit about the brand evolution, which is happening as we speak, if you don't mind. So Krispy Krunchy, just kind of starting at the top, we're around 3,500 locations, 48 states, all domestic today, but we think international in the future. We are mostly in convenience stores. So we're, 100 to 200 square feet of a convenience store. Started out, 36 years ago with independents. We have recently diversified a lot more chains. We were most recently brought on opening day for the Boston Red Sox to be their official fried chicken supplier. So if you go to Fenway Park, you'll see us very prominently there and really focus on diversifying the business. So diversification is huge for us because of the channels and what's happening in the industry, which is not necessarily brand, but without the brand work that I'm going to talk about now, we would not be there. Okay. So when I started with the company 3.5 years ago, we were purchased by a private equity company from the original owners, and we were a distribution company. We were, hey, let me sell you a great product. We got some branding, but it's not great. Colors aren't great. Very inconsistent. And we weren't trying to be a brand. We were just trying to sell chicken. Okay. The new leadership that came in identified, look, if we're going to really grow this business to its full potential, we need to be a brand. So obviously brought in folks like myself, our CMO, COO, others, and we rebranded the organization. Spent a lot of money rebranding and changing and really focusing in on social media and other outlets, search engine optimization, things like that, to where, the brand is becoming much more prominent, much more recognizable, so much so that, like the Red Sox partnership with us, the recent partnership, that's kind of catapulted us to the next level. So what's next? It's better brand awareness. It's diversification. You'll probably see us a lot more universities, a lot more chain C-stores, maybe, in an end cap by ourselves, international, things like that. But really the focus is on the Krispy Krunchy brand being recognizable and differentiated. And we've made a ton of progress in just the 3.5 years or so that I've been here.
That is so cool to hear that you guys started out just as a distribution company and then wound up making it just complete end to end as you have. And I love the nimbleness of the location of the prototype, right? So you talked about convenience stores, gas stations, part of groceries, universities, I imagine would be hugely successful, and now stadiums. Are you guys playing with anything outside of those in terms of just like onesie, twosie to see how it rolls? That may be kind of untraditional.
We are as our data analytics become better and we're better able to have leading indicators to predict success. we started, we call bodegas. So they're a lot of urban area bodegas. They don't have gas. They're small convenience stores, and they want to get into serving fresh food. And we're having really big success there. We have some freestanding locations on the West Coast that do actually really well. And again, as I mentioned, international, their retail in a lot of international locations is not exactly like ours. So there are differences, and there are different outlets. That it may be a small grocery store, for example, or it may be a food court, things like that. So right now we're evaluating that. We're also trying to figure out, do we want to be a co-brand, or do we want to do private label? We really haven't done that at this point. We're evaluating the pros and cons of that. Again, continuing to build the brand, being cautious about doing anything that doesn't have our brand, right, and go backwards, but also being open to folks that maybe want to do a co-brand, or we may test private label. I'm not sure. We're not quite there yet, but open to multiple channels of diversification for sure.
So as we've talked about, your focus has been rapid growth. Obviously, there's the metrics that private equity groups are measured on. I mean, the obvious question would be, have you guys wanted to dabble outside of chicken? So you've got all the locations and the footprint there. I mean, there's some obvious challenges with adding SKUs, but maybe just start there. I mean, what's prevented you guys? Is it just that you want to stay in the lane of chicken? Or is that a real constant consideration where you're just perhaps building onto the menu?
Yeah, I'll answer that directly, but then also talk to you about what we think is a better play for us. So the short answer is no. If you look at statistics, not just in our country but worldwide, chicken is the number one growth vehicle in growth protein in most countries, right? And you see a lot of QSRs that aren't chicken purveyors that are getting into chicken. So chicken is hot. We have a fantastic product, great supplier relationships, great long-term supply. So really no. But I tell you what we're trying to do is we're trying to make every item on our menu something we're proud to serve, and have no veto votes. So we do have sides. We have a biscuit that is phenomenal. I'm not a huge biscuit person, but I'm told from a lot of our guests and operators that I interact with that it's one of the best out there. So making every product, whether it's our mac and cheese, our French fry wedges, our jambalaya and red beans and rice are very, very good. I can vouch for those personally, but every product when you come into Krispy Krunchy, wow, this is good. We don't have a B product. So that's part of our culinary initiative and menu strategy is to do that. We are looking at some other, products as well, but I wouldn't say that we're looking for kind of a center of the plate, like let's get into burgers or pizza or anything like that. It would be more like, hey, what would people like to have with their fried chicken that they're not getting already?
Your brand's driven by convenience. I think it's going to be an eternal runway for you guys. My mind is already blowing in terms of just international growth and how you can provide different seasonings and flavors so easily just to the chicken.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, Lauren, but one other outlet that I haven't mentioned for the channels, and our CMO, if she hears this, would be remiss if I didn't. We've made a commitment last year to online ordering. So we have really ramped up our third party delivery platform, as well as our digital platform for pickup. It's really become a huge part of our business and is growing. And if you think about, the diversification, even in a C store, and I'll just tell a quick story. And my wife, for example, she has book club and wine club and all these other things where they eat and drink wine. And I'm not sure they talk about the book, but anyway, she and her friends love our product. And as soon as we had third party delivery, it went from me going a mile away to Krispy Krunchy and bringing the food back for them to eat, to them ordering online delivery. So I think about a whole population of folks that our food or would love our food if they tried it. And this channel really opens that up to folks. It's almost like the perfect ghost kitchen, right? So we're in all of these areas. We have great density in a lot of markets, and there's a population of consumers that would never buy food from a C store. And so that really opens things up, and it's really boosted our business as of late.
So talking about the different outlets, meal delivery or third-party apps, grocery, gas station convenience, bodegas, even now stadiums, what proves to be, at least so far, the most challenging in terms of just either distribution, final mile, operating agreements? What would you say is probably the most challenging to break into or stay in or operate from?
So as before the Red Sox, I would say it was getting into the large branded venues and chains, but we've gotten so much halo effect from that. That's really opened a lot of doors and set up a lot of meetings with us, with folks that we wouldn't even talk to us before that. So that's become less of an issue. I'd say it's the initial adoption of the third party platform. A lot of our operators are independents. We're getting more diversified with chains and more sophisticated customers, as I've mentioned. But you go into this operator and they're like, I just want to sell food and gas and cigarettes, right? And I don't need this online order platform. What's it going to do for me? And it's going to cost me whatever a month, right? And go in and once you get them over the hump, they would never go back. But it's almost kind of a 1 to 3,500 conversation. Not quite 3,500, but it's every individual operator has a different reason. These independents, and
Yeah.
you finally get them over the hump, and they realize it. And one of the ways we're combating that is we're getting better and better at testimonials and connecting, operator to operator, and that's helping. But that's heavy lifting right now. It has huge rewards, but you would think you go in and you say it takes you X number of orders a week to pay for this, and then everything else is incremental, and we prove it out time and time again. But then we have to go back and talk to the guy down the street, and then the other guy, and anyway, it's a one-to-one, it's a one-to-many conversation.
What is one leadership decision that you've made in the past few years that you can say has fundamentally changed, how you work today?
Yeah, great question. And I could come up with several. The one that I can really think about that I want to share is, I started my career with very large organizations. I started in a very large CPG company and a management training program. I worked for, as you mentioned, Wendy's and some other very large concepts. And that was phenomenal training, phenomenal, just really getting great mentorship and doing things the right way and learning really supply chain, QA, R&D, things like that. When I pivoted to the last 20 years or so, which has been mostly private equity backed turnarounds, rapid growth, and eventually sale or IPO. One concept that I picked up, and I think it's a lean concept. It's either lean or Six Sigma, but it's really non-value added versus value added. And not to pick on kind of my past, but when you work for a large company that has hundreds of people in supply chain, like many of the large QSRs, for example, you do a lot of things that don't necessarily add value to the customer. Okay, so and it's great to do that when you're being asked to do that, but when you are much leaner and you're focused in on just results on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute basis, it really makes you think about what to stop doing and what to do. And really, I use the definition for value added is, does the customer see a value in what I'm doing? And if they don't, we shouldn't be doing those things. So right now, I am constantly focusing myself, my team, really the organization at this point in, should we be working on those things, and constantly reprioritizing and asking, are we adding value that drives value to the organization, the private equity, the stakeholders, the ultimate customer? And if the answer is not an emphatic yes, we put that on the stop doing list and move forward. So huge unlock for me in my career. Not sure how I would fare if I went back to work for the very large organizations and had that attitude, but been very successful in the PE space and rapidly growing, with the intent to sell businesses and turn them around. So That's the best example I can think of, Lauren.
It's a great example. So I want to kind of dive and drill closer into just that private equity. Like you said, it's high stakes, and with that high pressure, I can imagine sometimes the stress, and if there's specific instances you can share. But why don't we just start with this, with high growth environments, high pressure, rapid pivots. Can you share when maybe an operational decision that you've made that's helped you manage a major crisis or supply chain disruption?
Yeah, I'll give you an example that includes kind of technology and visibility as well as strategic decisions. So, I was working for a company back before we had the container crisis. So you and I'm sure folks watching and listening to this remember after COVID, we had shortly thereafter we had container ships lining up for weeks and months off of our major port cities, and those of us that were importing a lot at the time, went through a whole lot of stress. So, kind of combining, technology to create visibility into demand, capacity, and just really tracking, what is necessary and building nearshore contingencies. I used to work for a company that did almost 100% importing and was part of moving a lot of the business to North and Central America to allow for diversification. I learned back then, many years ago, almost 30, that you just can't rely on importing alone. So always having that in my back pocket, and we had just enough, right? Like some of the delays were 4 to 6 weeks of being able to unload containers, and we had just enough on-site capacity in the U.S. to be able to fill those short-term gaps. Eventually, the backlog cleared, and we were good. But just having that contingency of having supply in the U.S. Was very critical.
How about a challenge faced when scaling? So if you're focused on rapid brand growth, what is probably the greatest challenge that you have when you're trying to grow it?
Yeah. So from what I've experienced, and especially in the last 20 years with PE and immediate results. I mean, we have to have results pretty much every day. At the longest time period is really every month because you have to report to your owners, and it's really creating flexibility. Okay, so when I say creating flexibility, that is doing things, maybe bringing on a boutique supplier, for example, versus a very large supplier as you're bringing a new product or service into the marketplace, and just really running a lot of what if scenarios, contingency scenarios. I've been dubbed Captain Contingency in the past by previous supervisors, and I just think really being nimble and understanding that the greatest idea today, if it doesn't, if it fails fast, you need to pivot, and writing off a bunch of inventory because you went with a very large supplier that didn't have that flexibility. There's really not a lot of appetite for that.
So when you're growing across state lines, where do you start with understanding how you want to distinguish what you want to source regionally and locally versus nationally?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's really on a case by case basis, and several factors. Freshness versus fresh versus frozen versus ambient. So obviously frozen and ambient products can be shipped farther and held longer, things like that. Also, product life cycle, like I just mentioned. A lot of times, especially with promotional products that we think could become, permanent menu items, for example, it's finding more boutique type suppliers that don't carry as much inventory, that have shorter lead times, that could be more nimble. And then if something becomes permanent, it grows, then you reevaluate. And I've had a lot of success. I've got a situation right now where we've just brought on a non-integrated poultry company, small and very fast, and we are luckily and fortunately bringing on business that is scaling very quickly, and they're able to pivot and help us get to that next step. Then we reevaluate and say, where should the business be going forward? So again, it's really case by case, and I find that scenario planning, which technology in fact, has helped a lot lately with, a lot of homegrown tools. There's a lot of off-the-shelf tools out there, but just different scenario planning. What's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? And what happens? What if? And that way, when the unexpected happens, it's not unexpected, and you just go with scenario 12 that nobody's even thought of it outside of the supply chain.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. I want to understand a little bit more about how you identify risks. I think scenario building, you may have just nailed it right there. But going back to that poultry partner, maybe it's them, maybe it's a different one. Can you provide a specific example of how a supply partner has helped drive growth for you?
Sure, sure. So I'll give you an example. We've got we have a fresh product right now, for example, and fresh poultry has a limited shelf life, as we all know. And before I came to Krispy Crunchy, we had various different recipes that our suppliers helped us through to try to get to the same flavor profile, and we didn't have consistency. We weren't like a McDonald's where a Big Mac tastes like a Big Mac everywhere you go. And so we had a company come in and help us become a strategic partner of ours to do kind of a just add water, and it's the same everywhere. And by the way, it's got a pretty good shelf life that we can do national distribution. So that and some other moves we made helped us fill in some gaps in some remote areas in the U.S. And this partner happens to be an international company with presence in many countries. So as we think about expanding and having the same flavor profile and the same recipe, that allows us to scale even as we go to other countries.
Well, you nailed it there, Joe. So supply partner helping support growth for you guys is look like consistent spec items, stronger shelf life, and then capabilities to distribute not only nationally but internationally. That's awesome. This may not be with your current company, but I want you to look back over the course of all of the brands you've supported, and where do you feel like I always like to ask about that relationship between supply chain and culinary, and where culinary is kind of in touch with just the innovation side of food trends and or guest feedback. Where have you seen some best case examples of how these two teams work together and seamlessly to make sure that, again, taking insights into what guests or consumers are wanting to have on the menu or what chefs are wanting to put on there, and then supply chain really just making it actionable? What do you think sets the two up for success?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I've worked in various org structures over my career. I've worked in back in kind of the beginning of QSR at Wendy's. We supply chain, QA, R&D were all under the same umbrella. We reported to the same person, so it was pretty straightforward and pretty easy. And we were able to tap into the insights from the marketing team, for example. So that's a pretty clean way and a balanced way. And the leader, that's the leader of everybody, can decide what the priorities are. So that would be unique, I would say. And I've managed R&D, supply chain, and QA myself, and done that. And I would totally agree with that from a firsthand experience from a management perspective as well. I think what's really important is alignment. I think there's kind of three areas that supply chain and culinary, and I would put QA in there too. QA, in my experience, is kind of the commercialization part of the process. R&D comes up with an idea, a product. Supply chain obviously has to source it, but somebody has to commercialize it. So that small batch that R&D is making in a pilot plant is scalable, throughout the chain, throughout the business, right? So I think that the balance here and the alignment is, chefs like to be creative, so we have to have an outlet. So 33% or so of their time needs to be spent on development and research and doing fun stuff and taking culinary trips to fun places so they can eat a lot of good food. Another balance needs to be on secondary sources and efficiencies and cost savings, which is kind of really what, the business and supply chain, needs. And then the third needs to be really kind of making sure that, we're thinking about what's next, filling the pantry, just getting ahead of things. The life cycle for a lot of concepts is still, 18 months or so. And to be able to pull something off the shelf that is relevant today versus creating it while it's relevant, it's a huge advantage. So I'd say it's that balance, that alignment. What I found is that if you get too heavy creative or too heavy, hey, we're just going to be operationally focused, cost focused, et cetera. If you get too out of balance, somebody gets unhappy and it creates friction that's not necessarily healthy for the business.
So you've talked about as single as opposed to secondary supply chain structures. I'm curious if there's any risks outside of that you can um, share with our listeners, either that you're tracking today that you think other people might be overlooking or that you just feel are specifically relevant and important.
Yeah, so multiple different sources, at every phase is critical, and I think that's kind of supply chain 101. I hope it is anyway. And always easy, obviously, especially as you're scaling. I think one area that's been really overlooked, and especially by a lot of smaller and growing companies that I try to incorporate even with kind of my bare bones approach to running supply chain is solvency and being able to be insured in case of an event. So that's a risk that, again, the larger companies, they've got an army of people that are focused in on checking solvency, making sure that they're named as an insured, the insurance levels are high enough, there's a contract. But I think that there's a lot of folks kind of in that mid-range, the smaller range, the fast growing. Maybe they've been somebody that's come over from operations to run supply chain, and they're not even thinking about, is this supplier going to be solvent? Okay. Do we have a contract that has indemnification and names us as an insured? And I think those are things that are very, very important, especially with all the level of traceability we have today in the food business and being able to trace things back and create liability. I mean, you make somebody very sick or even worse, and that could be a brand killer for a small and emerging company, especially.
I always like to ask what full visibility has enabled you to do in the area of procurement. And I feel like you've just provided one of the best answers so far on that, right? So just ensuring, safety, security, insurance. I don't know if there's another answer that comes to mind, but I think it's a great example of that different question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, risk kind of keeps me up at night. We could probably spend the next 3 or 4 hours talking about different types of risk there are, but just really, and one of the themes, I don't know if we'll get to this question, but benchmarking and relationships are still so critically important. And when you talk about, hey, I wasn't thinking about it, if we're talking about that, if we're talking to our peers and our supplier partners, they're good at understanding what mistakes they've made and what risks they've seen as well. So that's another piece that, you didn't ask the question, but I'll answer an unasked question that, the benchmarking and establishing relationships, not just with suppliers, but I think peer-to-peer relationships is critical. I've always tried to be involved with different groups and obviously not talk about pricing or anything that's proprietary, but hey, what did you do to, get fired the last time? Or what did you do to, to really have that promotion bomb? Or, what would you do differently kind of thing? So I think that's very important as in order to protect your business.
Yeah, I think relationship building is the most important thing in our industry, not only just from a supplier partnership, distributor partnership level, but also just peer to peer. As you're saying, there's so much that you can learn through someone else's experience in terms of challenges, headwinds, risks, things like that. Absolutely. Okay, I want to put your technology hat on for a little while because I think this is a really cool area that you've got great insight on. Why don't we just start with AI? It's been a part of a lot of discussions, constantly evolving, rapid improvements in use cases, and you're spending some time really understanding it. Can you share a little bit more about your experience as it evolves and as it involves AI and everything you know?
Yeah, great question. We're in the midst of doing a lot of studying and benchmarking and starting to implement AI very cautiously, but very consistently. So what I've kind of learned, and again, it's been a ton of benchmarking with AI consulting companies, with peers, with suppliers, kind of what to do, what not to do, as we talked about earlier. And here's some of the basics that we're learning and we're implementing. So kind of to start with, you have to explain to folks what AI is. A lot of our folks have no idea. You tell them artificial intelligence, and they say, "What is that? Is that the Terminator? Killing all of us? Taken over?" And you have to, you have to tell them, no, it's about utilizing tools to have better data, to make quicker decisions, to do mundane tasks, et cetera. So just really that baseline understanding of what even artificial intelligence is. And then kind of the next step, as I see it, that a lot of folks are skipping over, and it's costing them, is security. So just creating a secure environment. I've talked to some companies that went out and said, "Hey, we're just going to let everybody use Chat GPT," and they do that, and they allow somebody in the back door. They get hacked, or they get they get their systems taken over because they didn't put in place protections. Their data goes out into the ether and is available for folks that shouldn't have it. So really creating that security shield, that secure environment, right? And then really acceptance is number three, acceptance and training. So we're in that phase right now where we have the security in place. People know what artificial intelligence is, and now they're getting excited about it. AI isn't here to take your job, or robots with lasers coming out of their eyes to kill us. At least not yet. Hopefully never. But it's a tool to help them, right? And so we're starting to train folks on, hey, here's a spreadsheet. It just took you 4 hours to build this. Now let me show you how we can do that in 10 seconds. Okay. And take out your mundane tasks, make your job more useful. The next phase is really getting quick wins. Okay. So again, spending the least amount of money really possible. Others have taken more grandiose approaches and sometimes successful, but in our case, we think that's a big swing. So really getting quick wins, right? So we're establishing a team internally. We've got some third-party folks coming in that are showing us some simple use cases and helping us implement those. So we're spending minimal amounts of money, and we're hoping to get huge ROI returns. And then kind of the next phase for us, and then I can, if you ask me back to talk again, I can tell you where we are in 6 months or a year. But it's really building the strategy and the infrastructure. So it's kind of like a flywheel, right? Like we're turning the flywheel right now. It's really heavy, right? We're seeing it move, we're seeing results, but eventually it's going to start spinning. And just wanted to kind of share sort of the vision that I'm looking for at a high level. So we have a very strategic supplier partner, and they jumped full into AI, and we're kind of following their playbook using their consultants. And they followed the same playbook, and they're at a place now where their head of IT has told me multiple times he can't spend enough on AI now. He's gotten so much support from leadership, from employees, that they're saying, how can we spend more, because the returns are just there. So that's the playbook we're taking, right? We've had folks come in and say, hey, there's these great examples. If you spend $2 million, we can do this. And I'm much more thinking, we're going to spend tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands to get millions in return, get the flywheel moving, and then kind of build the infrastructure from within.
Okay, so I gotta recap this. That was perfect. And in terms of understanding, really, just where you started, the baseline. What is AI? Defining that for your team, for your company, your group. Not skipping over the security topic, just making sure you have a protected environment. Third, adoption, acceptance, and training. And what I loved about that is I heard that you guys are modeling and sharing exactly what it can be used in the context of for your company now that you've got a secure environment for it, right? So where culinary wants to spin a new spec and understand different cook temperatures, they can plug it in and have, here's an example of how you can experiment with it. There's so many different examples, but just starting off with what you said, just understanding, what we're talking about here and putting kind of a true context to it, I think is really, a lot of people walk into new technology with fear. So I think that's a really important place to start. And I love that you shared that. The image of the flywheel is really cool, Joe. I think that's exactly where we are with it. And That is so interesting how you shared it like that. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to answer, but you specifically, where do you feel you're going to be excited to use it the most? In what area? Is it in culinary? Is it for distribution? Is it for costing? And maybe not even necessarily today, but in the next 3 to 5 years, like where would you most excited to see it go?
So I'll give you a visual, Lauren. I hope this is what you were looking for. Throughout the organization is the simple cop out answer. But here's the vision that I've shared with our leadership. Right, is I want every employee within 12 months, let's say, to be able to open up whatever device they use, their phone, their iPad, their computer, and have a green, yellow, red analysis of these are the most important things you need to do now. These are things you need to be thinking about, and these are things that can wait a little while. These are and I think that 12 months, although aggressive, I think it's doable. I'd say by the end of next year at the latest. But as we build towards, and I know that's a generic answer, but I've seen demos of it. I actually was on a 2-hour demo this morning with one of our partners of one of our foundational data systems that showed us something very similar, that you come in and it's a dashboard and it leads you through your day, it leads you through your week, through your month. So that's where I'd like to go. As far as like push reporting, dashboards that are available more on demand and as needed, right? Like dashboards right now that we have are not dynamic. We go in and look at them, or they're pushed to us, but like, hey, you need to look at this. This is a problem. This is going to be a big problem in a little while. So that's kind of my vision. It's all about knowing where to put our efforts, where to put our resources. I think as we grow the business, I want to be able to prove that we're leveraging the business, especially in our rapid growth environment, and we're not having to hire kind of a one-to-one G&A. Our G&A growth does not equal our revenue growth, which is not good for any fast-growing company. So I think AI can really help us improve there as we scale.
All right, stepping aside from AI, how about any other technology investments that you've made that you would say has fundamentally changed how either your supply chain operates or just how you're running your business day to day?
Yeah, I don't know if this is technology, but I recently took over IT and all the tech a few months ago, and we had tons of dashboards and tons of information coming in. We had so many KPIs and so many reports coming in, and what we started to do is kind of employ what I started the podcast with is what's value added, what's important. Starting with here's our 5 things we said we're going to do as a company this year, right? What are those things? We should have a KPI, we should have a report, we should have a status from those every day, every week, what have you. So really it's kind of paring down and it's kind of technology, but it's, you end up getting 100 reports a week and 90 of them don't mean anything really to the day-to-day business or running the business. And if you get that down to the 10 most important things you need to focus on, kind of the rest of the business runs itself.
Yeah, data-driven approach, keeping your North Stars right there. I like that. I'm curious. You mentioned your wife participates in book club. What do you do for fun?
I like to hike. I like to spend time with my dogs. Used to do a lot of active sports, but don't really do those much anymore. But just really be outside. I live in Colorado, and I like to be outside as much as I can doing something.
I always like to ask data-driven analytical people, like, so what is it that you're passionate about outside of food service, distribution, supply chain? Because there's always a correlation, but just unplugging out in the outdoors sounds perfect.
My life is super stimulating all the time. I travel about 80% of the time, and I'm always on. And one of my favorite things to do is take the dogs on a long walk in the mountains, just to decompress and relax and not have to worry about anything except for them.
There you go. Okay. So here's another question where I want you to kind of go back, either Wendy's, Noodles, all of your experience, Portillo's. What is something that you learned either through one of those brands that you still apply day to day right now, or perhaps even before you got into food service, that's just strangely relevant to, what you're doing currently?
Yeah, I think, and I won't name the brand, but I worked for one of those brands that you mentioned, and um, was I learned that not all guests are created equal.
Mm.
Testing and follow up and not making assumptions is critically important. And an example, so at that brand, we rolled out cut chicken. Okay, so we were cutting. We were spending a lot on labor. I'd done it before. I'd done it with the same suppliers. I'd done it with almost the same specs. With a lot of success. And so I showed the product and we tasted it and we tested it in 3 locations, and leadership said, "Hey, this is a no-brainer," right? Which is kind of the kiss of death and any rollout. So don't, anybody listening, don't ever say it's a no-brainer. So anyways, so we rolled it out to the system, and the complaints that I was getting, were just tremendous. And so, you do your diligence, you go out into the market, talk to consumers, talk to the operators. And, what we found out is, this particular brand, the consumer was different than one of the larger brands I'd been with. And they were more discerning, and they were so vocal and self-influential with the local operators that, it just made sense for us to just pay the labor and process the product. So what that taught me was, just because it worked at one place, one, it doesn't mean it's going to work everywhere. And number two, the value of testing. I've always been a testing, processing type person, but even when things seem to be very, very obvious, just really taking the time, get out there and, spend talking to people, tasting, having discussion, and something that, that you may not pick up may be a huge deal to folks that have been used to receiving something a certain way, and it could damage the brand.
I I'm so glad I asked that. I think that's so relevant, especially, I mean, so many people, grow a career in being with a multitude of brands, and that's what makes them somewhat of an expert. Because just like we talked about with relationships, you gain something in every spot that kind of mines your expertise. So I think if you ever hear it's a no brainer, the risk signals should go out. I love that. Okay, why don't we get into final mile here? As quick as you can, answer the following. What is your favorite productivity hack that saves you the most time as you approach the workday?
I call it stealing 5 minutes. If a meeting ends early or if I get extra time that's a bonus, I hunker down and try to spend as much of that productive rather than taking a break and taking a breather. And what it does for me is I've noticed I've been doing it now for about 15 years, and my days end earlier. I have less stress. The thing I hate the most is getting to the end of the day and then having 3 or 4 hours of administrative things to do. And I just try to knock those out during the day.
For the next generation, what is your best secret or recommendation that you're willing to share?
Learn how to have critical thinking and think in scenarios, and not rely on your phone or AI or anything we've talked about technology wise. Just critical thinking, multiple paths, multiple scenarios, and yeah.
Who is an unsung hero behind Crispy Crunchy brand, making it happen in the day to day?
An unsung hero. I don't know if she's an unsung hero, but our CMO, Alice Crowder, one of the smartest people I've ever met, known, worked with, just fantastic. And she's not perfect. None of us are, but wow, she's fantastic at what she does.
How about you? What's been your proudest moment to date?
I don't know. I probably should say something about my wife or my, but
Do you know how everyone answers that question? I should probably mention my wife or kids, or I should probably.
yeah, I mean, from a personal perspective, it's been married to my wife for 28 years, and
Go
uh,
for
uh,
you.
so from a career perspective, I would say that the proudest moment is so I've had a couple, like at Noodles and Company. I when we became profitable for the first time, and the founder told me we'd never been profitable, and I was a big part of that. Soon after I got there, about 6
Wow.
months, and when I got here, we were in pretty dire straits, and when our chairman of the board now came to me and said how we haven't been in this healthy of a supply position in a really long time. We'd kind of outgrown our suppliers, and I built the team to turn that around very quickly. But it's just really making a difference, and having people recognize that, and helping the business.
I mean, making an impact. You are so impressive, Joe. You are the reason why I have these conversations. You have so much to share. You truly are a standout guest. And I want to make sure our guests can get a hold of you if they want to ask you a question or just get connected. Where can I send them? Where's the best place to reach you?
Yeah, you can have them email me, joegordon@crispycrunchy.com. That would probably be the best place to start. But yeah, happy to chat with your guests. It's been quite a pleasure to be on your show.
And Joe's on LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much, Joe. Great show. And for those that are listening, if you learned something today, please share it. Tell someone about this podcast. Thank you so much again, Joe.
Thank you, Lauren.
That's a wrap on this episode of Grounded. We've covered a lot of ground as we explored what it really takes to run food service behind the scenes. For show notes, highlights, and our latest market insights, visit us at groundedonthepod.com. Grounded is powered by the Buyer's Edge platform, delivering smarter solutions, greater efficiency, and real savings through connected tech, powerful data, and industry expertise. For more information and to get a personal demo of the Buyer's Edge platform, email me at lauren.mitchell@producealliance.com. And if you liked what you heard, subscribe so you don't miss an episode.